Dear brothers, welcome with the new Bible study. I'm glad you're joining again, and I hope this study will bring you some new insights and lessons for your daily life. Let's continue in 1 John 4 verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfect in love. In verse 17 we read that love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this verse, in verse 18, proof is provided. Also be aware, in this passage, John is describing God's love and our fear. This passage starts with a bold statement. There is no fear in love. The word for fear in the Greek is phobos, where we get the English word phobia. It describes something which causes terror or dread. The Bible has a lot to say about fear. The exhortation, fear not, or similar statements, appears throughout the Old and New Testament. However, in this verse, John tells us that fear and love are mutually exclusive, meaning that you either have fear or love, not both together. Paul tells us in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Therefore, if we truly understand God's love, there should be no fear. And then we have perfect love casts out fear. In this phrase, John uses the Greek word teleioi. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Just read it in the description, I put it down there. Which has the idea of maturity and completeness. However, he actually uses it twice, writing teloi, which is saying that God's love is perfectly perfected or completely complete. If we rely on God's perfect love, it should cast out all fear. The key to overcoming fear is total and a complete trust in God's love. Trusting God is how Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced the fiery furnace without fear, as we can read in Daniel 3. Trusting God is how Stephen stood fearlessly before his murderers, as we read in Acts 7. To trust God's love fully is to refuse to give in to fear. Even in the darkest times, we can trust in God to make things right. Therefore, God's perfect love should evoke complete trust in Him, banishing fear in our life. So thirdly, fear involves punishment. While many passages in the Old and New Testament tells us that we should fear God, the fear John writes of is not the reverence we should have for God, but the kind of fear which involves dread and punishment. Similar to how a criminal fears the law, a slave fears a cruel master, or a victim fears his attacker, that is the kind of fear John is referring to in this passage. Therefore, for the believer, the completeness of God's love means we do not need to cower in fear before God, dread His judgment, either now or on the day of judgment. We know all the judgment we ever deserved, past, present, and future, was poured out on Jesus Christ on the cross. Fourth, the one who fears is not perfect in love. If you hear something on the background, we have some thunderstorm going on here. So, the Bible tells us if we still have fear of God's punishment and wrath, fear of what God might do to us, fear that God doesn't want His best for us, or fear that God isn't really in control, then His love is not perfected in us. Psalm 118 verse 6 tells us, "The Lord is for me, so I will have no fear." What can mere people do to me? Therefore, if we fear, then God's perfect love is not yet perfected in us. Fear can be a gripping and paralyzing emotion, brothers. We can be fearful for many things. Fear for our health, fear of losing others, fear of supporting our family, fear of what others think of me, and on and on and on. Before we realize, we are getting controlled by our fears. On that moment, talk to God and know that He is in total control, and that being driven by fear is contrary to His love for us. If you find yourself being controlled by fear in areas of life, carefully meditate on the list of scriptures in the link below. Some say there are 365 fear not verses in the Bible, one for every day of the year. So I did not validate that, but you can check out the link that is shared in the description and look on some powerful verses. Thank you for studying the Bible with us, and hope to see you the next time.